This episode, The Hidden Cost of Being Yourself from the Axiom and Vessel series, is brought to you by Viscard Studio.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are tackling a piece of advice that you have probably heard 1,000 times.
Oh, 1,000 times is an understatement.
Right. It's printed on coffee mugs. It's in every single commencement speech. And it is, it has to be the most common caption on social media.
Be yourself.
Exactly. Be yourself. Be authentic. It sounds so simple, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It sounds like the most natural thing in the world. But I want to start with a bit of a reality check here.
Okay.
If you actually stop and think about it, really unpack it, it is incredibly complicated because we live in a society that is literally built on rules.
Right.
We have dress codes. We have polite pleasantries. We have expectations for how you act at a funeral versus how you act at a football game.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates this fundamental tension. It's the core conflict. We're told to be authentic, to show our true selves. But the moment you step outside your front door, you're entering a world of constraints.
And if you're too authentic, if you say exactly what you're thinking in a board meeting, or you wear exactly what you want to a formal wedding.
Yeah, you don't just get funny looks.
No, you get punished. You get actively penalized for it.
You get hammered down, as one of our sources puts it. And I think a lot of us feel this. We feel this exhaustion. You go to work, you put on the work mask, you say the right things, you smile when you don't want to smile, and you come home feeling just drained.
Completely drained. That performance takes energy.
So that's the mission for this deep dive. We're going to find out if being authentic is actually good advice or if it's, a trap.
It's a luxury.
Is it a luxury for people who can afford to not care?
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, we aren't just looking at pop psychology blogs. We are going deep into the stack.
We really are. We have a fascinating mix today. We've got 19th century transcendentalist essays from Ralph Waldo Emerson, which is where a lot of this modern idea really starts.
Right, the foundation.
We have comparative studies on Eastern philosophy featuring Rajneesh, who you might know as Osho.
Okay.
And then we jump to today. We have a very dense but fascinating paper from Nature Reviews Psychology that tries to scientifically define what real actually means.
And we've got some leadership guides that talk about the wobble of authenticity in the workplace. So we're covering a lot of ground.
A lot.
But I want to start with the anchor quote for this whole discussion. It's from Emerson, and I think it just sets the stage perfectly. He said, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment."
It's such a powerful place to start. And I think for the learner listening to this, whether you're, prepping for a leadership role or you're just someone who feels absolutely exhausted after a day of faking it at the office, this is for you. Mm-hmm. This is about why that exhaustion happens and what, if anything, you can do about it.
So let's unpack this. Let's go back to the philosophical foundations. Section 1, the acorn, the oak, and the rose.
I love this imagery. It really grounds the abstract idea of self in something real, something biological.
Me too. This comes primarily from a comparative analysis of Emerson and Rajneesh that we found. Let's start with Emerson. He wrote Self-Reliance in 1841, and he has this metaphor about the acorn and the oak.
Right. So Emerson asked this rhetorical question. Is the acorn better than the oak, which is its fullness and completion?
Okay.
And his point is that nature doesn't try to be something it isn't. An acorn doesn't look at a rose bush and get jealous. It doesn't try to grow petals.
It doesn't have flower envy.
Chuckled. Exactly. No flower envy. It has an internal mandate, a kind of biological script to become an oak. That's its purpose.
And if it tried to be a rose, that would be, it's impossible. It would fail at being a rose and it would fail at being an oak.
Emerson would call it suicide.
Whoa.
He actually says imitation is suicide.
That is a heavy word. Suicide, why so extreme?
He means it in a spiritual and existential sense. He believed that every person has a unique nature, just like that acorn has a unique nature.
An internal blueprint.
A blueprint, exactly. And the tragedy of human life, for him, is that we spend so much time looking outside of ourselves for cues on how to behave. We look at our neighbors, we look at celebrities, we look at what's trending on social media, rather than looking inside at what we are actually meant to become. He believed we are literally killing our potential by trying to fit a mold that wasn't cast for us.
But wait a minute. I got the sense reading this that Emerson wasn't just talking about, hey, do whatever you want. It was deeper than that.
Yeah.
It felt almost religious.
It was spiritual, certainly. This gets into the concept of divine intuition. You have to remember, Emerson was a transcendentalist.
Right.
He believed that if you rely on your own thought, your deepest, most private conviction, you are actually relying on something universal. He believed that the divine, that God, speaks through the individual.
So when he says trust thyself, he's not saying trust your ego or trust your every whim.
No.
He isn't saying if you feel like eating a donut for breakfast, that's God speaking.
Exactly. He's saying trust that spark of the universal that is inside you. It's the idea that your intuition is actually a frequency of the divine. So if you ignore your own intuition to follow some societal rule,
You're not just betraying yourself.
you're betraying the universe. You're hanging up on God.
That is a massive amount of pressure, though. I mean, honestly, how do you tell the difference between divine intuition and just, I don't know, bad mood or a selfish impulse?
And that's the hard part, and Emerson admits it. It requires solitude and discipline and a lot of self-interrogation to hear that voice clearly.
Okay, so that's Emerson. Now let's pivot to the Eastern parallel here. We have this comparative analysis with Rajneesh or Osho. He uses a similar metaphor, but it's a rose.
Right. The quote from the source is, "A rose flower is a rose flower. There is no question of its being something else."
It's very similar to Emerson on the surface.
Very similar, but the flavor is different. Emerson is very American. You can feel that rugged individualism, that focus on moral independence, what he called man thinking. Rajneesh approaches it from a more mystical, existential angle.
How so? What's the key distinction there?
Well, for Rajneesh, authenticity isn't about building a character. It's about uncovering one. He talks about the original face.
The original face.
Who were you before society told you who to be? Before your parents, your teachers, your boss, your religion told you how to behave and what to believe?
That's the social conditioning aspect.
Exactly. Rajneesh argues that society imposes this layer of falseness over us, like a mask on top of a mask. We're trained to be polite, to be obedient, to be successful in a very specific way.
Right.
And all of that covers up the original face. So for him, the path to authenticity is through meditative awareness. You have to strip away the conditioning to reveal the rose that was always there.
So it's a subtractive process.
It's subtractive, whereas Emerson's often feels like an assertive process. Assert your truth versus uncover your truth.
It sounds so easy when you say it like that, though. Just be the rose. Just strip away the layers. But my gut reaction to reading this was, society makes that incredibly hard.
Oh, incredibly.
You can't just decide to be a rose if you're working a 9-to-5 that requires you to be a spreadsheet.
And that is the friction we are going to explore for the rest of this deep dive. But before we get to the modern workplace, we have to realize this isn't a new problem. This tension between the individual and the rules goes back way, way further than Emerson.
Okay, let's go to the rebels of antiquity, section 2. Because when I think of authenticity, I usually think of modern things, therapy, self-help books, Instagram influencers talking about their journey.
Sure.
But the ancients were obsessed with this too.
They were, but they defined it very differently. For us today, authenticity is often about feelings.
Right. I feel like doing this, so I should do it.
Exactly. For Socrates, for the Stoics, it was about reason, it was about virtue, it was a much more rigorous, logical framework.
Let's talk about Socrates, the ultimate nonconformist.
Absolutely. The man who said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates is really the foundational figure here because he refused to compromise his internal standard of truth for the political expectations of Athens.
And it cost him his life.
It cost him everything. He chose death over conformity.
Wow.
He did. He believed that his duty was to the integrity of his own soul to reason with a capital R, and if the laws of Athens asked him to violate that, he couldn't do it.
That is the ultimate authenticity.
It's not, I'm going to wear sweatpants because it feels good. It is, I'm going to drink hemlock because to live a lie is worse than death.
That is intense. But then you have Diogenes. And Diogenes is, well, he is something else entirely. He is the extreme example.
Diogenes the cynic, he takes Socrates' idea and, like you said, turns it into performance art.
He really does.
Diogenes believed that all societal norms, manners, etiquette, even housing and clothing were artificial constructions that took us away from nature and virtue.
So he lived in a ceramic jar in the street.
He lived in a wine jar on the street. He owned almost nothing. And there is this famous detail in the sources that I think perfectly captures his philosophy. He would eat in the marketplace.
Which, to a modern listener, sounds like, well, okay, so I eat in the food court all the time. Why does that matter?
Right. It sounds totally normal to us. But in ancient Athens, eating in the public marketplace was considered scandalous. It was indecent. It was just not done.
So what was he doing? What was the point?
It was like, okay, imagine if you walked into a really serious, high-stakes board meeting today. Everyone is in dark suits talking about quarterly earnings and hushed tones. And you walk in, sit at the head of the table, and start eating a sloppy rack of ribs with your bare hands.
Okay, that paints a picture. A very messy picture.
That is what Diogenes was doing. He wasn't just being a jerk for the sake of it. He was challenging the manners that restrict the self.
He was forcing the question.
Yes. He was asking, why is this wrong? It is natural to eat when I'm hungry. Why do we have this arbitrary rule that says I can't eat here? Is this rule based on nature and virtue, or is it based on vanity and social anxiety?
He was trying to shock people into seeing how arbitrary their rules were.
He was stripping away all the social etiquette to prove his point. It's the ancient equivalent of the person who refuses to wear a tie to the office, but times 1,000.
1,000, yeah.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the Stoics.
Like Marcus Aurelius.
Exactly. He took a much more internal approach. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome. He had, quite literally, the biggest public role in the world. He couldn't live in a jar.
No, he had some responsibilities.
A few. He had to wear the purple robes. He had to attend the ceremonies. He was the system in many ways.
So how do you stay authentic when you're the emperor? How is that even possible?
You build an inner citadel. The Stoics talked about prohairesis, your moral will, your faculty of choice. Yeah. Marcus Aurelius believed that no matter what your external role was, you could keep your internal character authentic to your principles. You can play the role of the emperor as long as you don't lose your soul to it.
That feels very relevant to the modern corporate world.
Extremely.
You can play the role of the manager as long as you don't forget who you are inside.
That's the ideal. But as we'll see when we get to the psychology, maintaining that split, the public face versus the private self, is much harder than it looks. It takes a real toll.
Okay, let's get into that. Section 3, the science of real. We have this paper from Nature Reviews Psychology, and it turns out defining authenticity scientifically is, well, it's actually really hard.
It is. It was the word of the year in 2023, but even psychologists argue about what it really means. The paper does a great job breaking it down into what they call the 4 C's of authenticity.
The 4 C's.
And this is really helpful for anyone trying to figure out, where they stand on this.
Okay, let's run through them. Number 1 is consistency.
Consistency is, do you act the same way in all situations? Are you the same person with your family as you are with your boss, as you are with your friends?
The chameleon.
Right. If you are a chameleon changing your colors for every room you walk into, you score low on consistency.
Which feels intuitive.
Yeah.
If you're shifting constantly, you feel fake. So number 2 is conformity. And this one confused me at first.
I know, it's counterintuitive.
Because isn't authenticity about nonconformity? About being Diogenes?
This is a really nuanced point. In this context, conformity means conforming to a social category or a stereotype.
What do you mean by that?
For example, if you are a musician, do you act like a real musician? If you are a leader, do you act like what we expect a real leader to act like?
Oh, I see. So if I'm a heavy metal guitarist, but I show up wearing a polo shirt and khaki shorts, and I'm talking about 401k, people might see me as inauthentic because I'm not conforming to the category of metal guy.
Exactly. We judge authenticity in others partly by how well they fit our expectations of that category. It is the exact same reason we say a restaurant is authentic Italian.
Right.
It conforms to our stereotype of what Italian food should be. If they serve you a hamburger, you say this isn't authentic, even if the chef authentically from the bottom of his heart wanted to cook a hamburger that day.
That is fascinating. So our perception of someone else's authenticity can actually be about how well they fit a stereotype we hold.
In the eyes of the observer, yes. The 3rd C is connection. This is about being true to your origins, your roots.
Like the artist who stays real to the neighborhood they grew up in, even after they get famous.
Right. If you get famous and you change everything about yourself, you've lost that connection to your past. And the 4th C is continuity.
Continuity.
Are you evolving naturally over time? You aren't the same person you were at 10 years old, but there should be a narrative thread that connects you.
A logical progression.
A logical progression. If you wake up tomorrow with a completely different personality, a different set of values, that breaks continuity. It feels inauthentic or even, medically concerning.
So we have these 4 C's as a framework.
Yeah.
But then the paper throws a huge curveball. He talks about the true self heuristic.
The TSAG theory, true self as guide.
Right.
And this is where it gets really interesting for the skeptics in the audience. Some psychologists argue that the true self might not actually exist as a solid biological object.
Wait, so it's a myth.
It isn't like you have a kidney, a liver, and a true self located somewhere in your chest. They argue it's a judgment. It's a heuristic, a mental shortcut.
Okay, shortcut for what?
We believe a true self exists, and that belief helps us make decisions. It simplifies life. Should I take this job? Does it align with my true self? If you didn't believe in a true self, that decision would be infinitely more complex and paralyzing.
So even if it isn't scientifically real, the concept is functionally necessary. It's a useful fiction.
Precisely. And here's the kicker from that research: the mood factor.
The mood factor.
Studies show that people feel more authentic when they are in a good mood.
Really? How does that work?
When people are acting in socially desirable ways, being kind, being helpful, being outgoing, being productive, they report feeling more authentic, even if those behaviors contradict their usual personality.
So if I'm normally a grumpy introvert, but I have a day where I'm super happy and chatting with everyone at the coffee machine, I actually feel more authentic in that moment.
You do,
Yeah.
because we fundamentally associate authenticity with the positive pole of human traits.
The good stuff.
The good stuff. We believe our true self is a good person. So when we are being good, we feel real. When we are being grumpy or mean or lazy, we tend to say, I wasn't myself today. We distance ourselves from it.
Wow. That completely flips the script.
Yeah.
We usually think being real means showing the messy, dark, complicated stuff.
We do.
But our brains actually reward us for showing the shiny, happy, socially acceptable stuff.
It suggests that feeling authentic is often just another way of saying feeling good about yourself.
Which leads us right into the friction. Because we don't always feel good and we don't always fit in. Let's move to section 4, the wobbles and the costs. This is where I want to get really specific. We have these scenarios in the research that highlight the problem-solution dynamic.
This is where the rubber meets the road. We can talk about Emerson all day, but what happens when you try to be authentic in a specific social situation on a Tuesday afternoon?
Let's start with this concept of the authenticity wobble. This comes from the Begin with Trust source, which is a leadership guide.
This is a great concept for anyone in a leadership position. The idea is that trust is a triangle. You need logic, empathy, and authenticity. If any one of those 3 legs wobbles, the whole structure of trust collapses.
And they describe a specific type of person, the empathy wobbler. This links to scenario D in our notes, the person who is extremely extroverted or maybe highly intellectual.
Right. So imagine someone who is super smart, a real genius. They are in a meeting, they get the concept immediately in the first 5 minutes, and then they get bored. And because they are being authentic to their boredom, they check out.
The source calls it flamboyant boredom.
I love that phrase.
They check their phones, they start multitasking on their laptop, they start looking around the room, sighing.
Now ask yourself, is that authentic? Yes, it absolutely is. They are genuinely bored. They are expressing their true internal state.
But it destroys trust.
Completely, because the signal it sends to everyone else in the room is, I don't care about you, your ideas are boring, this is a waste of my valuable time.
So this is the first major lesson of practical authenticity.
Yes. Authenticity without empathy is just selfishness. If your being real makes everyone else feel small or unheard or disrespected, you are failing as a leader, even if you are succeeding at being you.
Okay, let's look at another one. This is scenario A, the health and diet paradox. This connects to the amor propri source, which uses Rousseau's philosophy.
This is a dense concept, but let's break it down. Rousseau, the philosopher, he distinguished between 2 types of self-love.
Okay.
Amour de soi is self-love rooted in survival. It's biological. I am hungry, I need to eat. I am cold, I need shelter.
Basic needs.
Basic needs. Then there's amour propre. This is self-love rooted in vanity and social validation. It's not about what you need, it's about how you are seen by others.
It's about the applause.
It's all about the applause. I want to eat this so people think I'm healthy, or I want to wear this so people think I'm fashionable.
Okay, so here's the scenario. A person hates kale. They genuinely, authentically despise kale. But they eat it every single day because they want to be seen as a healthy person by society.
Right. If you are eating the kale just to be evaluated positively by others, you are in a state of what Rousseau would call inflamed amour propre. You are living for the judgment of others.
You're disconnected.
You're disconnected from your actual survival instincts, your taste buds, your hunger. You are performing health.
But the flip side is true too. Let's say the person authentically wants to eat cheeseburgers every day. That's their true desire.
Then they face the social cost. Society expects a person to look fit. In our current culture, being thin or athletic is often conflated with being virtuous or disciplined. If you choose the authentic path of the cheeseburger and you become obese as a result, society judges you.
You get labeled unhealthy, lazy, undisciplined.
So you're stuck in this trap. If you eat the kale, you feel fake to yourself. If you eat the burger, you're judged by everyone else.
That's the trap. So how do you get out of it? What's the solution?
The source argues that when we are obsessed with how we are evaluated, that amour propre, we lose touch with our actual authentic needs. The authentic move is to figure out what you value more. Is it the taste of the food, or is it the feeling of health? Not what society thinks of your health, but your actual physical well-being.
It's about stripping away the audience. It's asking, if nobody was watching, if there was no Instagram, what would I eat?
Exactly. Are you doing it for your body, or are you doing it for the mirror?
Well, let's talk about scenario B, the dress code. This is Diogenes in the modern office.
Yes. The scenario is simple. Everyone is in suits. It's a formal attire environment. You show up in shorts and a t-shirt because that is you. That is how you are comfortable.
And the authenticity scale source, we looked at quotes, a Japanese proverb here. The nail that sticks up gets hammered down.
It is a brutal but often true statement about social dynamics. We like to tell kids, be yourself, but in many corporate or social environments, if you deviate from the norm, even just in your clothing, you create anxiety in others.
Why, though? Why does it create anxiety? Why do people care if I wear shorts? It doesn't physically hurt them.
It signals unpredictability. Humans are tribal creatures at our core. We rely on social scripts to know who is safe and who is dangerous.
A shared code.
A shared code. If you don't follow the simple dress code rule, the group's unconscious brain thinks, well, maybe he won't follow the don't embezzle money rule. Maybe he won't follow the be polite to clients rule. It triggers a small but real threat response.
So the trade-off here is the physical comfort of the shorts worth the social anxiety of alienation?
And that is a calculation everyone has to make for themselves. Diogenes said, yes, it is absolutely worth it. Most people in an office say, no, I'll just wear the tie.
But you have to know why you are wearing the tie.
Right. Are you wearing it because you respect the occasion and the people you're with, or are you wearing it simply because you were afraid?
Scenario C, brutal honesty. The no-filter person. The person who always says, hey, I'm just being honest.
We've all met this person. They say something incredibly hurtful or inappropriate and then use authenticity as their shield. I'm just keeping it real.
The UCL paper on authenticity as ethical self-cultivation hits this so hard.
It does. It brings in philosophers like Sartre and Bauer, and the core argument is true authenticity requires accountability. Okay. If you define authenticity as just doing whatever I feel like at any given moment, that isn't authenticity. That is, and this is a quote, destructive self-centeredness.
Ouch.
Authenticity is a relational concept. It exists between people. Sartre argued that you cannot truly be free unless you recognize and respect the freedom of others.
So if my truth crushes someone else's ability to be themselves,
you aren't being authentic, you're being a tyrant. You're just imposing your will on others.
So being a jerk is not a valid form of authenticity.
Not if you want to be an ethical human being. This is the crucial distinction. Authenticity isn't a get-out-of-jail-free card for bad behavior.
You have to own the consequences.
You have to own your actions. If you are brutally honest, you have to be willing to accept the brutal consequences of that honesty. You don't get to demand that people like it or thank you for it.
That is a powerful pivot. It changes authenticity from just a feeling to a responsibility.
It really does. It gives it moral weight.
So we've looked at the costs. We've seen the traps. Let's look at the ledger in Section 5. Why do this at all? If it risks social exclusion, if it gets you hammered down, why bother?
Well, the benefits are significant. I mean, the science is very clear on this.
Okay, let's list them out. What's the upside?
First, health, mental and physical. Authenticity buffers against stress, anxiety, and depression. The mental energy required to mask, to constantly perform and pretend to be someone else is enormous.
It's exhausting.
It drains your cognitive resources. When you stop doing that, you get that energy back.
It's like closing all the background apps on your phone.
That's a perfect analogy. Your battery lasts longer. Second, work. People who feel they can be authentic at work report higher engagement. There is a concept called emotional labor, service with a smile. If you have to fake a smile for 8 hours a day as part of your job,
It means burnout.
massive burnout and alienation. You start to feel like a robot, completely disconnected from your work and yourself. Authenticity prevents that.
And what about talent?
This is what one source calls the Goldilocks effect. When your authentic self happens to align with talents that society values, it is magic.
Okay, an example.
Think of a visionary creative artist or a brilliant, quirky tech founder. If their weirdness is the very thing that makes them better at their job, society rewards them for it. They're not just tolerated, they're celebrated.
But that leads directly to the risk, doesn't it?
It leads directly to the risk of social exclusion. And this is the dark side of authenticity.
What happens when you don't fit in that neat way?
If your authentic self lacks those profitable talents, or if you are just weird in a way that doesn't make money, society is much, much less forgiving.
Right.
If you are Diogenes living in a jar, you don't get a venture capital deal. You get ignored or, more likely, arrested.
It seems like society only rewards authenticity if it is successful or palatable.
Or if it isn't perceived as mentally unstable. If you talk to yourself, if you dress wildly, if you act outside the norm without the money or fame to back it up, you are often labeled as unstable. Your authenticity is pathologized.
There's also the hypocrisy trap.
Right. The moment you claim to be authentic, people watch you like a hawk.
You're under a microscope.
Completely. And if you slip up, if you change your mind, if you have a bad day and act out of character, you're branded a hypocrite. Sometimes it is safer to not claim authenticity at all.
But there is one argument in the sources that I found really, really compelling. The opportunity cost argument. The time constraint.
This is the ultimate pragmatic argument for authenticity. You have a limited amount of time on this earth, a finite number of days. If you spend that time constantly managing how others perceive you, calculating every move, every outfit, every sentence to get approval, you are not actually living your life. You are performing a life for an audience.
Authenticity saves time.
It saves your life. It allows you to actually inhabit your moments rather than curating them. Even if the audience claps at the end of the performance, you weren't there to hear it. You were backstage managing the lights.
That hits home. It really does. It makes me think about how much time I, and probably everyone, spends worrying about what other people think.
It is the difference between being the protagonist of your life and being the PR manager of your life.
Let's move to section 6. We've gone through the West, through science, through the office. I want to go back to the East for a different perspective on all this. Zhuangzi and the useless tree.
This is one of my favorite philosophical stories. It's from Taoism, and it completely reframes the idea of value.
So set the scene for us.
Okay, so Zhuangzi tells a story about a master carpenter walking through a forest with his apprentice.
And he's looking for wood.
He is looking for lumber. He is looking for profit. He sees hundreds of trees, and he is judging them. That one is straight good for a pillar. That one has nice grain good for a boat. He is seeing them as products.
He is doing an ROI calculation on nature.
Exactly. And then he stops. He and his apprentice come across this massive oak tree. It is huge, ancient. It is so big, 1,000 oxen could hide behind its trunk. It is the king of the forest.
But the carpenter just scoffs at it.
He doesn't even look twice. He says, that tree is worthless. It is useless.
Why? It's the biggest tree there.
And the apprentice asks that. The carpenter says, the wood is too knotty and twisted to make planks. The branches are too crooked to make pillars. If you make a boat out of it, it will sink. If you make a coffin, it will rot. It is good for nothing. So the carpenter just leaves it alone.
And the tree survives.
Well, all the straight, useful trees, the ones that fit the carpenter's standard of a good tree, are cut down by the axe.
Wow. So by being useless to society, the tree was ultimately useful to itself. It had fulfilled its own purpose, which was just to live.
Exactly. Later in the story, the tree appears to the carpenter in a dream and basically says, are you kidding me? Look at all those useful trees. As soon as they produce fruit, people strip them, they get beaten, they get cut down. Their utility is their downfall. But me, I've been trying to be useless for a long, long time. And now I've finally achieved it. And that is why I'm still alive.
It turns our entire capitalist logic on its head. We spend our whole lives trying to be useful. Be a useful employee. Be a useful contact. Be a value add.
And Zhuangzi is saying, if you make yourself into a tool, don't be surprised when you get used.
The uncarved block. I saw that phrase in the source material.
That is the Taoist concept of Pu, the uncarved block. It is the state of pure potential before society hacks away at you and carves you into a specific, useful object.
Wow.
The lesson here is that sometimes not fitting in, being the gnarly, twisted, useless tree, is the key to survival. It is the key to freedom. If you make yourself too useful to the machine will eventually consume you.
So authenticity in this frame is a survival strategy against the machine.
It is. It is a way of saying, I am not raw material for your project. I am my own project.
This has been quite a journey. We've gone from acorns to boardrooms to gnarly trees. Let's try to bring it all into the outro. What is the synthesis here? Because we have seen that authenticity is risky. It can get you fired. It can get you hammered down. But being inauthentic also seems to be a slow death. It drains your life force.
I think the synthesis is that authenticity isn't a destination. It's not a state you achieve. You don't just find yourself and then stop. It is a wobble, as we saw in the Leadership Guide.
It's a dynamic balance, a constant negotiation.
It's a negotiation that requires two things that seem opposite: courage and wisdom.
Okay.
You need the courage to be different, to be the nail that sticks up, to be the rose, to be the useless tree. But you also need the wisdom to recognize your accountability to other people.
You're not Diogenes in a vacuum.
You are not Diogenes in a vacuum. You are a person among people. Your freedom ends where theirs begins.
So it is about navigating that tension, being true to yourself without being a destructive force to those around you.
Precisely. It is about being the oak tree, but providing shade for others, not just taking up all the sunlight for yourself.
I want to leave the listener with one final thought. We found this in a source on Zen Buddhism. It is a short anecdote about a boy and a lawyer.
I love this one. It sums up the whole paradox perfectly.
So, this city lawyer is lost in the backwoods. He is driving a fancy car, probably in a rush, very stressed out. He sees a boy sitting on a porch, just calmly playing a fiddle. The lawyer rolls down the window and asks, "Hey, how do we get to Little Rock?"
And the boy looks around, thinks for a moment, and says, "Sir, you can't get there from here."
The lawyer gets frustrated. He points to the dusty road in front of them and asks, "Well, where does this road go?"
And the boy looks at the road and says, "It don't go nowhere. Every morning I get up and it's just sitting there."
It's just sitting there.
The lawyer is looking for a destination. He wants the road to do something, to take him somewhere. The boy understands that the road just is.
And maybe that is the secret to authenticity. We spend so much time trying to get there, trying to become our authentic selves.
We treat it like a destination on a map.
Exactly. If I just buy this journal or take this retreat or change my job, then I'll get to authenticity.
But you can't get there from here because you are already here. You are already sitting there like the road. Maybe the very effort to become authentic is the thing preventing you from just being it.
Stop trying to go somewhere. Just be the road. Thanks for taking the dive with us.